Today I'm going to show you how to make a squirmy wormy. It's certainly a pattern that will divide the audience. It's very much a Marmite type fly. You will either love it or you will hate it. However, on its day it can be an absolutely deadly pattern, and you know, if you're looking for a versatile selection of flies to be carrying around, then I certainly would carry a couple in your fly box. They come in a range of different colours. You got some pretty fluorescent pink, or like a bubblegum pink, red, tan, all manner of different colours. So you can just vary the colours according to what your preference is, or what the colour of the water is, and so on and so forth. You know, if you're looking for a more natural presentation, then obviously you can go for a tan type colour. Winter grayling, for example, the pink works well, as does the red. They can be, even though they look incredibly simple, they can be quite tough to tie. You have to be careful with the type of thread that you use. You have to be careful about using solvents, because the solvents dissolve the squirmy material. So there are actually a few considerations to take into account when tying the squirmy. I actually try and work around a lot of these problems, and the way I'm going to show you now is the way I tend to you say dress. They're not really dressed to an extent which you will soon see why I say that. Anyway, in the vise I've got a size 12 partridge wide gape jig hook. You can put them down, yeah, you can use 14s, 10s, whatever takes your fancy. Again, just vary the size of the hook according, more than anything, according to the size of the bead. I'm just going to use a size a 4mm fluorescent orange slotted tungsten bead today, just because it will show up better for video purposes. Right, so what I'm going to do is just take the thread and just tie it in just behind the eye, take a couple of turns up, snip off the excess, and then just take it up just one layer, just up to the bend of the jig, bend of the, literally where the jig part starts, and then just whip finish. And don't do too many turns on the whip finish either. You'll see why in a minute. Literally about 2 turns is enough. And snip that off. Okay, now we go back, we take that out, we go back to the bead. The bead is here. Slot that onto the hook. Let's take it back up to the vise. And now we pass that over that thread base, okay? So if you were to do too much of a thread base, essentially, the bead wouldn't slide over. So be careful not to use too thick a thread. This was actually a 10-0, and be careful not to add too many layers. And so what we're going to do now is, I'm going to take a drop of UV resin. Bear with me. A good drop of the resin. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to drop that in to the slot. Just drop it in there and allow it to soak into the slot. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually form a base with the thread that's underneath. And then that's all we need to do is blast that with the UV torch, and that will stay in place. So the reason we do the thread is, if we were to just put the resin inside the bead and then you just had the connection between the bead and the hook, that would actually crack and the bead would just slide around the place. but by forming the thread base to begin with, you actually then have the bond between the resin and that thread, so then it doesn't move around, so it actually stays. Let's blast that a little bit. It's just working down and still into there. Okay, so the next step is we then form a little bump of thread just around the bend of the hook here. And we want a small bump in terms of length, but essentially as high as we can create it. So just take the thread over the same spot just to build up. If your thread starts to split, just twist it, just spin the bobbin, and then just start again, and that will keep it in one place. Okay, that's enough. And then just whip finish. Okay, this is looking a bit bizarre. You're probably thinking, what am I doing? It will all become apparent in a minute. Just whip finish and cut that off there. We're now back to the resin. So what we're going to do now is actually create a ball of resin around that bump of thread. So got a good ball, good amount of resin there, and just spin it around that thread base. And the idea of using the thread base here is exactly the same as underneath the bead, and that is to stop. If you were to just put this lump of or ball of resin on the bare hook, it would just crack. It would just crack, or it would just slide off, and we don't want either to happen. But again, with the thread, it's just going to soak slightly into the thread and then not move around at all. Okay, so that's that done. So you can see just two sections to compile, and that is it. So you would actually do this in batches. The beauty of this is you could vary this, the color and size of the bead, and the size of the hook as well if you wanted to. But the beauty of this is how you actually carry the squirmy base. So what we then do, and this is where the pattern essentially gets created. So the squirmy material is difficult to work with. If you were tying it, it just slides around on the hook and stuff. But by doing it this way, that's all we then do is we take the hook out, we pinch the hook into the squirmy material and just thread it up a few millimeters, and then pop the hook back out like so. What we then do is we encourage that squirmy material to travel up and over that bump that we've created. This can take a bit of encouragement because it does catch on that bump like so. And that is it, essentially created. If you don't want that kind of bump there, it doesn't matter. Yeah, from my perspective, it doesn't matter at all. If you don't want that bump, you just thread less up and over that bump. But honestly, it won't make any difference whatsoever. So the beauty of this is, because of that bump, it doesn't slide back over it. Okay, so you do that, it doesn't slide back over, but you can, if you wanted to just change, you can keep the same hook in place. If you wanted to change the colour of the squirmy, that's all you do is just slide this back off and then to slide on a different colour. This saves you from having to create loads of different squirmies. You've actually just got one base hook and then just carry a packet of little sections and then just chop and change as needed. The other benefit is if a fish bites through this section, or this material can be fragile. If this does become damaged, you haven't lost the fly essentially. You just slide this off, slide on a new piece, and you're back fishing. So it's a really versatile way of not having to carry a load of different pre-tied squirmies. You just carry a range of different hooks. Yeah, the size of the hooks and the weight and colour of the beads. This thread bump at the back, I've used red thread. You can actually use some fluorescent orange or whatever if you wanted to create a bit of a target point at the back as well. But that is essentially how easy it is to create. The same pattern can also be used as a bit more of a gummy nymph pattern. So if you wanted to just create like a really easy nymph pattern, not that it is a particularly attractive nymph pattern, but it does work. If you wanted to create like just a gummy nymph, then you can also do that. And even at that point, if you wanted to, I suppose you could tie a bit of tail if it doesn't come trapped when you're sliding the material over. But yeah, a really easy, quick and effective way of creating squirmies. And again, they won't be for everybody. But for those that do fish squirmies or want to try fishing squirmies, this is a really easy way of just carrying a good selection around. I hope it brings you luck. Tight lines.